Hello there, my sleepy citizens. Tonight, we journey into the shadowed streets of Gotham City, where mysteries lurk and the Dark Knight stands vigilant against the forces of chaos. We bring you tales of Batman, uncovering different sides of the man behind the mask. And as our journey through these stories winds down, a calm ambience of Gotham's streets will carry you throughout the night, bringing you to restful sleep without interruptions from any ads. If you enjoy these tales, please be sure to give us a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments what story you'd like to hear next. But for now, let's get cozy and step into the world of Gotham. Rain painted Gotham's rooftops in shifting patterns of silver and shadow, each droplet catching the distant glow of the city's lights before disappearing into the darkness below. Batman stood on the edge of Wayne Tower, his cape heavy with moisture as he watched the familiar beacon that had summoned him countless times. But tonight, the Bat's signal was wrong, twisted into shapes that hurt to look at, morphing between symbols that seemed almost familiar before dissolving into chaos. The signal had been flickering for 3 nights now, casting strange shadows across the police headquarters rooftop. What should have been the clean, iconic silhouette of a bat had become something else entirely. Geometric patterns that pulsed and shifted, letters that rearranged themselves even as Batman tried to decipher their meaning. Oracle's voice crackled through his cowl, distorted by the same electronic interference that was plaguing communications systems across the city. The signals broadcasting on multiple frequencies simultaneously, she reported, her usual calm strained by frustration. Whatever Riddler's done to the projection system, it's creating cascading interference patterns. Emergency services are having trouble coordinating responses. Batman's jaw tightened as he watched another transformation ripple across the clouds above. This time, the distorted signal formed what looked like a question mark, but one that bent and curved in impossible ways, as if the very air was questioning itself. Rain continued its steady percussion against the city's surfaces, creating a rhythmic backdrop that seemed to match the signal's pulsing changes. "Alfred," Batman sub-vocalized into his comm system. "Are you monitoring the Batcomputer's analysis?" "Indeed, Master Bruce," came the butler's measured response from the cave far below. "I've been tracking the pattern variations for the past 72 hours. The signal modifications appear to follow a mathematical progression, though one considerably more complex than Edward Nygma's usual fare. The mention of the Riddler's real name carried weight in the rain-soaked air. Edward Nygma had always been different from Gotham's other criminals, driven not by greed or rage, but by an impulsive need to prove his intellectual superiority. His crimes were elaborate puzzles, challenges that demanded recognition of his genius even as they caused chaos throughout the city. Batman activated his grappling gun and swung toward police headquarters, rain streaming past his cowl as he moved through the storm. The GCPD building rose through the downpour like a lighthouse of mundane law enforcement, its upper floors crowned by the signal apparatus that had become Riddler's latest canvas. From this closer vantage point, the corrupted signal's complexity became even more apparent. Layers upon layers of encoded information, broadcasting simultaneously across multiple spectrums. Commissioner Gordon was waiting on the roof, his coat collar turned up against the persistent drizzle. The weathered cop's face showed the strain of 3 sleepless nights, dealing with communication failures and increasing reports of system malfunctions throughout the city. "It started small," Gordon explained, gesturing toward the signal apparatus. "Just minor glitches in the projection system. Our tech department thought it was weather interference." He paused, watching as the signal above them shifted from incomprehensible symbols to what looked like a crossword grid filled with moving letters. Then Riddler's calling card showed up. He handed Batman a soggy envelope that had been pinned to the signal controls with a question mark-shaped pin. Inside, Batman found a single sheet of paper covered with Edward Nygma's distinctive handwriting, precise, almost architectural in its perfection. "Greetings, Dark Knight," the note read. "By now you've noticed that your beacon has become something more interesting. Each night the rain falls, my signals reach further. Each puzzle unsolved erases another piece of Gotham's digital foundation. Hospitals, banks, transportation, all connected, all vulnerable. Solve my riddle in time, or watch the city's information infrastructure dissolve like tears in the rain. P.S. I do hope you appreciate the poetry of using your own symbol against you." Batman studied the letter carefully, his cowl's analytical system scanning for hidden messages or clues embedded in the text structure. "How long have the system failures been occurring?" "Started the same night as the signal corruption," Gordon replied. "Minor glitches at first, traffic lights staying red too long, hospital computers rebooting unexpectedly. But it's escalating. Last night, 3 bank networks went offline simultaneously. No money was stolen, just disrupted." The implications were troubling. Riddler's crimes usually followed predictable patterns. Elaborate setups leading to clear solutions that demonstrated his intellectual superiority, but this felt different, more systematic and far-reaching than his typical puzzles. "I need to examine the signal apparatus," Batman said, already moving toward the equipment housing. The GCPD's signal projector had been modified extensively, though the changes were subtle enough that they might have escaped notice during routine maintenance. Additional components had been integrated into the system, devices that Batman's enhanced vision revealed to be sophisticated signal processors and transmission amplifiers. "Oracle," he subvocalized. "I'm seeing hardware modifications that look professionally installed. This wasn't a quick hack job." "The complexity suggests long-term planning," she agreed. "Riddler would have needed inside knowledge of the signal system's specifications, plus access to install these modifications without detection." Batman turned to Gordon. "Who has maintenance access to this equipment?" "Limited personnel only," the commissioner replied. "Our tech officer, Angela Martinez, oversees all signal operations. She's been with the department for 8 years, completely reliable." "I'd like to speak with her." Gordon's expression grew troubled. "That's the problem. She called in sick 3 days ago, right when this started. We haven't been able to reach her since." The pieces were beginning to form a pattern, though one that felt incomplete. Batman studied the modified signal apparatus more closely, noting the quality of the additional components. These weren't improvised additions. They represented sophisticated electronic engineering, the kind that required both technical expertise and significant resources. "Alfred," he said into his comm, "cross-nexarize Angela Martinez with any known associates of Edward Nygma. Look for technical training, communications expertise, anything that might explain her involvement." "Searching now, Master Bruce," Alfred replied, "though I should note that the Bat computer's analysis of the signal patterns has revealed something interesting. The broadcasts aren't random. They're following a sequence that appears to correlate with classical puzzle structures." Batman's attention sharpened. "What kind of puzzles?" "Crossword patterns primarily. The signal transformations match the grid structures of competition-level crossword puzzles, though with additional layers of encoding. If I may suggest, we might benefit from consulting someone with expertise in that particular field." The suggestion made sense. Riddler's obsession with puzzles often led him to incorporate elements from legitimate puzzle communities, mathematicians, crossword construct. If his current scheme was based on crossword patterns, they would need someone who understood the deeper structures of such puzzles. Do we have any contacts in the crossword community? Batman asked. Alfred's typing was audible through the comm system. There is one possibility. Professor Margaret Whitman, former 3-time national crossword champion. She retired from competition 5 years ago following a personal tragedy and has lived as something of a recluse since then. However, her understanding of puzzle construction remains unparalleled. Batman looked up at the corrupted signal, watching as it shifted through another sequence of incomprehensible symbols. The rain continued its steady rhythm, and he could see how the moisture in the air might be amplifying the broadcast signal, extending its reach across the city. Where does she live? The Narrows, in one of the older residential buildings. I should warn you, Master Bruce. Professor Whitman has been quite reluctant to engage with the outside world since her retirement. The Narrows made sense. The old neighborhood's relative isolation would appeal to someone seeking solitude, and its lower cost of living would suit someone on an academic pension. Batman prepared to leave the police headquarters rooftop, but Gordon caught his attention. There's something else, the commissioner said. The system failures aren't completely random. They're hitting infrastructure in a specific pattern, like breadcrumbs leading somewhere. Batman studied the list of affected systems that Gordon handed him. Banks, hospitals, transportation hubs, all critical infrastructure, but also all connected through Gotham's central communications network. If someone wanted to cause maximum disruption while maintaining plausible deniability, this would be an effective approach. Keep monitoring the failures, Batman instructed. Look for any pattern in timing or location. And Commissioner, make sure your emergency services have backup communication protocols ready. If this escalates... Gordon nodded grimly. Already working on it, but Batman, how long do we have? Looking up at the signal as it transformed once again into indecipherable symbols, Batman wished he had a clear answer. Unknown. But Riddler's escalation patterns suggest we don't have long. The journey to the Narrows took Batman through Gotham's quieter districts, where the rain fell more gently on tree-lined streets and residential buildings. The older architecture here told stories of the city's earlier eras, a time when Gotham's growth was more organic, less dominated by the corporate towers that now defined its skyline. Professor Whitman's building was a converted townhouse that had seen better decades, its brick facade weathered but well maintained. Batman approached with care, knowing that someone who had deliberately withdrawn from public life might not welcome unexpected visitors, especially one arriving in the middle of a rainy night. The building's security was minimal, old-fashioned locks that yielded to his tools without difficulty, but as he climbed the narrow staircase to the 3rd floor, Batman became aware that his approach had not gone unnoticed. A door opened before he could knock, revealing a woman in her 60s with sharp, intelligent eyes that missed nothing. "You're taller than I expected," Professor Whitman said calmly, as if costumed vigilantes regularly appeared at her door during rainstorms. "I assume this is about the signal corruption. I've been watching it from my window." Batman paused, struck by her directness. "You know why I'm here?" "The patterns are unmistakably puzzle-based," she replied, stepping aside to let him enter. "And given Gotham's history with riddle-obsessed criminals, it doesn't take genius-level deduction to connect the dots." Her apartment was small but meticulously organized, with one wall covered entirely by crossword puzzles in various stages of completion. Though I should clarify, I don't engage with puzzles anymore, not since... She trailed off, her gaze distant. Batman noticed framed photographs on a side table, images of a younger Professor Whitman accepting trophies and certificates, always accompanied by a smiling young man who shared her sharp features. "Your son," Batman said gently. Daniel was a puzzle enthusiast as well, she confirmed, her voice carefully controlled. Brilliant mind, absolutely brilliant. He was working on a doctoral thesis about the psychological compulsions behind puzzle creation. What drives people to construct elaborate mental challenges? His research focused particularly on cases where puzzle making becomes obsessive behavior. The connection was becoming clearer. He studied Edward Nygma. Professor Whitman nodded slowly, among others. Daniel believed he could develop therapeutic approaches for individuals whose intelligence had become channeled into antisocial puzzle making. He was corresponding with several incarcerated criminals, trying to understand the psychological roots of their compulsions. She moved to a desk where rain-spotted papers were scattered among academic journals and correspondence. 3 months before his death, Daniel told me he'd made a breakthrough in understanding how certain puzzle creators think. He said he'd identified patterns that could predict when someone's puzzle making would escalate from harmless intellectual exercise to criminal behavior. Batman studied the photographs more closely. What happened to him? Car accident, she said simply. Rain-slicked roads, just like tonight. He was driving home from a late research session. Her hands moved unconsciously to straighten papers that were already perfectly arranged. After the funeral, I found his research notes. Everything he'd discovered about puzzle psychology. All his correspondence with various criminals. I couldn't look at another puzzle after reading what those minds were capable of. The rain against her windows provided a gentle background rhythm as Batman processed this information. But you still understand puzzle construction better than anyone. Understanding and engaging are different things, Professor Whitman replied. I can recognize patterns, analyze structures, explain methodologies, but I can't participate in solving them anymore. Too many memories. Batman moved closer to the window where she'd been watching the corrupted signal. From this vantage point, the distorted beacon was clearly visible across the city, its impossible shapes casting strange shadows on the low-hanging clouds. The signal patterns, he said carefully. What do you see? Professor Whitman was quiet for a long moment, studying the shifting display above Gotham's skyline. Nested crossword grids, she finally said. Multiple puzzle structures layered on top of each other. Whoever designed this understands advanced construction techniques, the kind taught in graduate-level puzzle theory courses, like the ones your son took. Her sharp intake of breath was barely audible. Daniel's research notes mentioned correspondence with a GCPD technical officer, someone who was auditing puzzle theory courses at Gotham University while working full-time in law enforcement. She turned from the window, her expression troubled. A woman named Angela Martinez. The pieces were falling into place, but the pattern they revealed was more complex than Batman had initially assumed. Martinez wasn't just helping Riddler access the signal equipment. She was using your son's research. It appears so, Professor Whitman said quietly. Daniel believed that understanding criminal puzzle psychology required studying it from the inside, literally thinking like the criminals he was trying to help. If someone had access to his notes, his correspondence, his psychological profiles, they could predict how Riddler thinks, Batman finished, maybe even manipulate his behavior. Professor Whitman moved to her desk and retrieved a thick fold of academic papers. Daniel's final theory was that certain puzzle creators could be influenced by providing them with irresistible challenges, problems that would override their usual patterns and compel specific responses. She opened the folder to reveal pages of psychological analysis and behavioral predictions. If Martinez understood these techniques, she could control Riddler rather than just working with him, Batman realized. The implications were troubling. Not just a criminal partnership, but a manipulation that used Edward Nygma's psychological compulsions against him. The signal corruption isn't random, Professor Whitman continued, studying pages from her son's research. It's designed to create a specific type of puzzle challenge, one that would appeal to Riddler's need for recognition while serving someone else's goals. Batman's comm system crackled as Alfred's voice came through. Master Bruce, I'm detecting a significant escalation in the signal patterns. The broadcasts are becoming more frequent and reaching wider areas. Additionally, reports of system failures are accelerating across multiple city districts. Looking out at the corrupted signal, Batman could see that Alfred was right. The transformations were occurring more rapidly now, cycling through complex patterns that seemed to pulse in rhythm with the rainfall. Professor, he said, I understand your reluctance to engage with puzzles directly, but if Martinez is using your son's research to manipulate a dangerous criminal, you're asking me to honor Daniel's memory by completing his work, she said softly, by using his insights to stop someone who perverted his research for criminal purposes. Batman nodded. I'm asking for your help to protect the city. Your son wanted to use puzzle psychology to help people. Maybe this is a way to fulfill that goal. Professor Whitman stared out at the rain-soaked city for a long moment, watching the corrupted signal pulse against the clouds. When she finally spoke, her voice carried quiet resolve. I'll need access to current signal broadcasts and any communication intercepts you might have, she said, and I'll want to examine the actual signal apparatus to understand how Martinez modified it. She paused, gathering Daniel's research papers. But I won't be solving the puzzles directly. I'll provide analysis and prediction, help you understand the patterns. The actual solutions will have to come from you. Understood, Batman agreed. Can you travel to the cave? My resources there will give you everything you need. She nodded slowly. It's been 5 years since I've left this apartment for anything other than necessities. But Daniel always said that the most important puzzles are the ones that help other people. She gathered the research materials and a worn jacket. I suppose it's time to honor that belief. The journey to Wayne Manor gave Professor Whitman her first look at the signal corruption from multiple vantage points throughout the city. As the Batmobile moved through Gotham's rain-slicked streets, she observed how the distorted broadcasts were affecting different neighborhoods. The interference patterns are stronger in areas with older communication infrastructure, she noted, studying readings on the vehicle's display systems. Whoever planned this understood Gotham's technical vulnerabilities very well. Martinez had 8 years of experience with GCPD communications, Batman replied, plus access to citywide infrastructure reports through her official duties, and Daniel's research would have given her psychological insights into how to manipulate Riddler's behavior. Professor Whitman added grimly, she's been playing a longer game than either of you realized. They descended into the Batcave through concealed passages that had protected Wayne family secrets for generations. Professor Whitman took in the cave's impressive technology with academic appreciation, though Batman noticed her gaze lingering on the memorial cases that honored fallen allies and victims they'd been unable to save. Master Bruce, Alfred greeted them as they approached the Bat-computer's main console. Professor Whitman, welcome to our somewhat unconventional research facility. Despite the circumstances, his manner carried the formal courtesy that had served the Wayne family for decades. Thank you, Alfred, she replied, though I should clarify that I'm here as a consultant only. I won't be actively solving any puzzles. That responsibility remains with Batman. Alfred nodded with understanding. Of course. I've prepared a workspace with all available signal analyses and communication intercepts. Additionally, I've compiled everything we know about Angela Martinez's background and recent activities. The Bat computer's displays showed the current status of the signal corruption in real time. Multiple screens tracked the broadcast patterns, system failures throughout the city, and predictive models attempting to forecast the next escalation. The patterns are definitely accelerating, Professor Whitman observed, studying the data streams. But they're not random. This follows a classic puzzle structure called layered revelation. Each solution reveals part of a larger puzzle, building toward a final challenge. Batman leaned closer to examine the pattern analysis. How many layers? Based on the current progression, Professor Whitman traced the mathematical curves on the display. I'd estimate we're seeing the third of 5 layers. The final 2 will probably involve direct challenges to Batman specifically, rather than general system disruption. Meaning the city-wide interference is just preparation for a personal confrontation, Batman concluded. Exactly. Martinez understands that Riddler's ultimate goal is always to prove his intellectual superiority over you. She's using the infrastructure attacks to create the proper dramatic setting for that confrontation. Alfred's fingers moved efficiently across multiple keyboards as he cross-referenced data from various sources. I've located Martinez's current position, he announced. She's established herself in an abandoned communications facility in the industrial district, one of the old relay stations from Gotham's earlier telephone network. The location made tactical sense. An abandoned communications facility would provide both the infrastructure needed for complex signal manipulation and the isolation required for extended criminal activity. Distance from the GCPD signal? Batman asked. Approximately 3 miles, Alfred replied. Bell, within the range of the transmission equipment Martinez has installed. Professor Whitman studied building schematics that Alfred had called up on an adjacent screen. This facility would have access to multiple communication networks, telephone, radio, early cable television infrastructure. Someone with Martinez's expertise could use it to coordinate attacks across the entire city. And if she's manipulating Riddler using your son's psychological research, Batman said, she could be controlling when and how he escalates his challenges. Daniel's notes suggest that puzzle-obsessed individuals can be triggered into specific behavior patterns by presenting them with irresistible intellectual challenges, Professor Whitman confirmed. Martinez could be using that to make Riddler dance to her tune while serving her own agenda. Batman prepared to leave for the industrial district, but Professor Whitman stopped him. There's something else you should understand about Daniel's research. He discovered that the most dangerous puzzle creators are those who've moved beyond seeking recognition for their intelligence. They're the ones who use puzzles as weapons, not to show off but to cause specific, calculated harm. You think Martinez falls into that category? I think she's been planning this for years, Professor Whitman replied, using her position with GCPD to study Gotham's vulnerabilities, auditing courses to understand puzzle psychology, building relationships with criminals who could further her goals. This isn't about intellectual satisfaction, it's about power. The industrial district at night was a maze of abandoned factories and forgotten infrastructure, much of it dating to Gotham's manufacturing heyday decades earlier. Rain collected in puddles that reflected the few functioning streetlights, creating a landscape of shifting shadows and uncertain footing. Batman approached the old communications facility with careful reconnaissance, using his cowl's enhanced vision to map the building's current status. The structure showed clear signs of recent habitation. New power cables running to formerly dead equipment, modified security systems protecting what should have been an empty building. Oracle, he subvocalized. I'm seeing significant electrical activity in a facility that's supposed to be abandoned. Confirmed, she replied. Power consumption patterns suggest multiple high-energy devices operating simultaneously. And Batman? I'm detecting radio transmissions that match the signal corruption frequencies. Batman moved closer, finding concealed entry points that had been modified recently. Inside, the old facility had been transformed into a sophisticated command center. Banks of modern equipment lined the walls where telephone switching gear had once operated, and multiple displays showed real-time feeds of the signal corruption and its effects throughout the city. Angela Martinez stood at the center of it all, monitoring data streams with professional efficiency. She was younger than Batman had expected, probably in her early 30s, with the focused intensity of someone completely absorbed in complex technical work. Her setup was impressive, representing months or years of careful preparation. But Martinez wasn't alone. Edward Nygma sat at a workstation across the room, surrounded by papers covered with puzzles in various stages of completion. The Riddler looked different than usual, less theatrical, more genuinely focused on the intellectual challenges before him. He was working on what appeared to be a massive crossword puzzle, though one with a grid structure unlike anything Batman had seen before. "The next layer activates in 17 minutes, Martinez called out, checking her equipment status. "Are the challenge parameters ready?" "Nearly complete," Riddler replied, his voice carrying unusual satisfaction. "Though I must admit this approach to puzzle presentation is far more elegant than my usual methods. The technical integration possibilities are remarkable." Batman listened from concealment, trying to understand the dynamic between the two criminals. Martinez seemed to be directing the operation, while Riddler was providing puzzle content, but the relationship felt more collaborative than exploitative. "Edward," Martinez continued, "remember that the final challenges need to be solvable. The goal isn't to create impossible puzzles. It's to demonstrate control over Gotham's information systems, while providing Batman with a path to resolution." "Of course," Riddler agreed. "Though I confess, part of me wonders what would happen if we made one of them truly unsolvable. The psychological impact on our dear Dark Knight could be fascinating." "That's not the plan," Martinez said firmly. "We stick to the agreed-upon structure. Demonstration of capability, escalating challenges, then resolution on our terms." Batman's comm system buzzed softly as Alfred's voice came through. "Master Bruce, the signal patterns are shifting again. Professor Whitman believes we're approaching the 4th layer, which should involve more direct challenges to you personally." Looking at Riddler's workspace, Batman could see puzzles that were clearly designed with Batman's specific knowledge and capabilities in mind. These weren't general challenges, they were personal, incorporating details about Batman's methods and history that only someone with access to GCPD files would know. Martinez has been studying Batman through official police reports, he realized, sub-vocalizing to Alfred. She knows how he approaches problems, what kinds of challenges would appeal to his detective instincts, and she's using that knowledge to create puzzles that will keep you engaged while she accomplishes her real objectives. Professor Whitman's voice joined the conversation from the cave. "It's a sophisticated manipulation, making you complicit in your own distraction." Batman continued observing as Martinez made final adjustments to her equipment. Whatever the 4th layer involved, it was about to begin. On cue, every display in the facility showed the same image, the bat signal, but restored to its proper form and apparently functioning normally. "Layer 4 initiates now," Martinez announced. "Edward, begin the personal challenge sequence." Riddler activated a communication system that connected directly to Batman's CAL frequency, something that should have been impossible given the encryption protocols Oracle used. "Good evening, Batman," came Riddler's familiar voice, though without his usual theatrical flourish. "I trust you've been enjoying our little demonstration of technical prowess. But now we move to more personal matters. On every screen in the facility, and presumably on the real bat signal above GCPD headquarters, a new puzzle appeared. This one was clearly designed specifically for Batman. incorporating elements of Gotham's history, the Wayne family legacy, and details about past cases that only someone with access to comprehensive police files would know. You have 30 minutes to solve this challenge, Riddler continued. Failure to do so will result in the permanent deletion of all digital records related to Martha and Thomas Wayne. Hospital records, legal documents, photographs, everything. Their memory will be erased from Gotham's digital consciousness. The threat was both deeply personal and technically feasible. If Martinez had the level of access she demonstrated, targeting the Wayne family records would be well within her capability. Alfred, Batman sub-vocalized. Can we protect the Wayne family archives? Working on it now, Master Bruce, Alfred replied, though his typing sounded more urgent than usual. However, the records are distributed across multiple systems throughout the city. Comprehensive protection would be challenging. Batman studied the puzzle displayed on the screens around him. It was complex, but not impossible. Exactly the kind of intellectual challenge that would normally appeal to his detective instincts. But now he understood that engaging with it was exactly what Martinez wanted. Professor Whitman, he said into his comm, what happens if I refuse to play? Based on Daniel's research, that would likely trigger an escalation, she replied. Puzzle creators who don't receive the engagement they expect often respond with increased aggression. Martinez probably has contingency plans for non-participation. As if to confirm her analysis, Riddler's voice came through the comm again. Oh, and Batman, in case you're considering ignoring this challenge, I should mention that each minute of delay will result in the deletion of 100 random citizen medical records from Gotham General Hospital. Some puzzles demand engagement, whether you're in the mood or not. The psychological manipulation was sophisticated, creating a scenario where Batman had no choice but to participate in the challenge, regardless of his tactical preferences. Martinez understood both Batman's psychology and Riddler's, using each against the other while serving her own goals. Batman began working on the puzzle, but not in the way Martinez and Riddler expected. Instead of solving it directly, he used his cowl's analytical systems to reverse engineer the challenge structure, looking for clues about Martinez's true objectives. Alfred, this puzzle incorporates details about the Wayne family that aren't in any official records, he observed, information that would only be available through private sources. Most troubling, Master Bruce, I am cross-referencing the specific details mentioned in the challenge. As Batman continued his analysis, a pattern began emerging. The puzzle wasn't just designed to engage his intellect, it was structured to make him reveal information about Wayne family secrets, while appearing to solve a riddle. Each correct answer would confirm details about the Wayne legacy that Martinez couldn't have obtained through official channels. She's not just threatening to delete Wayne family records, Batman realized. She's trying to make me provide information that would let her access private Wayne archives. A fishing expedition disguised as an intellectual challenge, Professor Whitman confirmed from the cave. Daniel's research describes similar techniques, using puzzle solving as a form of involuntary information sharing. Batman stopped working on the puzzle directly and instead began tracing the communication signals back to their source. If Martinez wanted to play games with information, he could play that game better than she could. Oracle, I need you to trace these signals while maintaining the appearance that I'm still working on the puzzle. Make it look like I'm making progress but buying time. Already on it, she replied. And Batman... Professor Whitman has identified something important about the puzzle structure. Professor Whitman's voice joined the conversation. The mathematical progression suggests this is actually the penultimate challenge. There's one more layer planned, something that will require all the information Martinez has been gathering. Batman continued his signal tracing, while maintaining the pretense of puzzle solving. The communication pathways led through several relay points before terminating at the abandoned facility where he was currently concealed. But the routing was more complex than necessary, suggesting that Martinez had additional infrastructure positioned throughout the city. She's got backup facilities, he realized. This isn't her only command center. Multiple locations would make sense, Alfred agreed. If her goal involves long-term control over Gotham's information systems, redundancy would be essential. As Batman worked to map Martinez's complete network, the 30-minute deadline approached. On the screens around him, a countdown timer showed less than 5 minutes remaining before the threatened deletion of Wayne family records would begin. Edward, Martinez called to Riddler. Prepare the transition to Layer 5. Batman's taking longer than anticipated, but his approach patterns suggest he'll solve the current challenge. Fascinating, Riddler replied, studying data feeds that showed Batman's progress. His methodology is more indirect than usual, almost as if he's solving multiple problems simultaneously. That's exactly what he's doing, Martinez said with satisfaction, which means he's playing the game exactly as planned. But Batman wasn't playing the game as planned. He was rewriting the rules entirely. Using the information he'd gathered about Martinez's network, he began implementing a counter-strategy that would turn her own systems against her. Alfred, I'm uploading network topology data to the Bat computer. I need you to prepare a comprehensive counter-intrusion protocol. Understood, Master Bruce. Though I should note that such an approach carries significant risks. If Martinez detects the intrusion attempt, she'll escalate to her final challenge ahead of schedule, Batman finished, which might actually work in our favor. Professor Whitman's voice carried concern. Forcing the final confrontation early could be dangerous. If Martinez hasn't completed her preparations, then she'll make mistakes, Batman replied, and mistakes create opportunities. With 2 minutes remaining on the countdown timer, Batman transmitted his solution to the displayed puzzle. But instead of providing the answers Martinez expected, he sent carefully crafted responses that appeared correct, while actually containing embedded code designed to penetrate her network systems. The effect was immediate. Alarms began sounding throughout the facility as Martinez security systems detected the intrusion attempt. But by then, Batman's code had already begun mapping her complete infrastructure, revealing the full scope of her operation. Clever, Martinez said, her professional calm finally cracking slightly. Though you should realize that forcing my hand like this will make the final challenge considerably more dangerous. I'm counting on it, Batman replied, stepping out of concealment to face both criminals directly. Riddler looked up from his workstation with genuine surprise. You've been here the entire time. Observing our collaboration, his expression shifted from surprise to appreciation. How delightfully recursive, the puzzle solver becoming part of the puzzle he's trying to solve. It's over, Martinez, Batman said, though he kept his attention divided between both criminals. I've mapped your entire network. Oracle is already beginning shutdown procedures for your backup facilities. Martinez's smile was cold, but not defeated. You're assuming that this facility and the backups are my only resources. But you've forgotten something important, Batman. I've had 8 years of access to GCPD systems. 8 years to study not just Gotham's infrastructure, but its protectors. She activated a final sequence on her control systems, and every screen in the facility displayed a new image. Not a puzzle this time, but a detailed schematic of the Batcave itself. The final challenge isn't a riddle, Martinez explained. It's a choice. You can stop my attacks on Gotham's digital infrastructure, or you can protect the secrets of your base of operations. But my analysis suggests you can't do both simultaneously. Riddler's eyes widened as he studied the cave schematics. Remarkable. The engineering alone must have cost... Wait. His expression shifted to concern as he processed the implications. Angela, this wasn't part of our agreement. You said we were demonstrating technical superiority, not compromising Batman's operational security. Plans evolve, Edward, Martinez replied dismissively. Though I appreciate your ethical concerns, they're not really relevant anymore. Batman's comm system crackled as Alfred's voice came through, carrying uncharacteristic urgency. Master Bruce, we're detecting massive intrusion attempts against all cave systems simultaneously. Professor Whitman and I are implementing countermeasures, but the attack vectors are remarkably sophisticated. Oracle, Batman sub-vocalized, working on containing the infrastructure attacks. But Martinez is right. The resource requirements are beyond what we can handle while also protecting the cave, Oracle replied grimly. Looking at the facility around him, Batman realized that Martinez had planned this moment perfectly. She'd manipulated both Riddler and Batman into positions where they would serve her ultimate goal, forcing Batman to choose between protecting the city and protecting his own operational capability. But she'd made one crucial error in her calculations. She'd assumed that Batman would approach this as a solitary problem, trying to handle both challenges through his own resources. What she hadn't anticipated was the collaborative approach that Professor Whitman had brought to the situation. Alfred, Batman said calmly, transfer all cave defensive protocols to Professor Whitman's control. She understands puzzle psychology better than Martinez does. Master Bruce, Alfred replied with concern, that level of system access is exactly what we need right now, Batman finished. Professor, can you handle protecting the cave while Alfred and Oracle focus on the infrastructure attacks? Professor Whitman's voice carried quiet determination. I haven't solved a puzzle in 5 years, Batman, but protecting Daniel's research from being misused? That's not solving a puzzle, that's honoring his memory. The next few minutes were a complex dance of electronic warfare as 3 separate teams worked to counter Martinez's attacks. Professor Whitman approached the cave's defense from a puzzle theorist's perspective, anticipating Martinez's attack patterns based on psychological principles rather than purely technical analysis. Meanwhile, Alfred and Oracle combined their efforts to systematically shut down Martinez's infrastructure attacks, using the network topology Batman had mapped to target her systems more efficiently than she could respond. But Martinez wasn't finished. As her attacks faltered, she turned to Riddler with desperate intensity. Edward, I need you to create one final puzzle. Something so compelling that Batman will have to engage with it directly. Riddler looked between Martinez and Batman, his expression troubled. Angela, I'm beginning to suspect that your goals and mine aren't as aligned as I initially believed. Your goals are intellectual recognition, Martinez replied sharply. I'm offering you the chance to defeat Batman definitively. Isn't that what you've always wanted? What I've always wanted, Riddler said slowly, is worthy intellectual opposition, not the destruction of the opponent himself. He stood from his workstation, moving away from Martinez. I believe I've been manipulated, and I find that considerably more offensive than simple defeat. Martinez's professional composure finally shattered completely. You're all so predictable. Batman's rigid moral code, Riddler's intellectual vanity, even Professor Whitman's sentimental attachment to her dead son's research. I've accounted for every psychological variable, anticipated every possible response. Except one, Batman said quietly. You assumed that understanding people's motivations was the same as controlling them. But people aren't puzzles, Martinez. They're not problems to be solved. Oh, but they are, she replied, reaching for what appeared to be a final failsafe control. And I've solved all of you. But as she activated her last resort protocol, nothing happened. The facility's systems remained under Batman's control. Her backup network stayed offline, and the cave's defenses held firm against her intrusion attempts. How? She demanded, staring at unresponsive control panels. Professor Whitman predicted your fail-safe strategy based on her son's research, Batman explained. We've been 3 steps ahead of you for the past 20 minutes. Professor Whitman's voice came through the comm system with quiet satisfaction. Daniel's final theory was that the most dangerous puzzle creators eventually trap themselves in their own constructions. They become so focused on controlling every variable that they lose sight of the larger picture. Martinez looked around the facility that had been her command center, now completely under Batman's control. Her elaborate scheme, months or years in the planning, had collapsed in a matter of minutes once her psychological assumptions proved incorrect. The signal corruption will be reversed within the hour, Alfred reported. All affected city systems are being restored from backup archives, and Martinez's intrusion attempts against the cave have been completely neutralized. Riddler approached Batman with uncharacteristic humility. I owe you an apology. I allowed myself to be used as a tool in someone else's agenda. That's considerably more embarrassing than simple defeat in intellectual combat. What matters is that you recognize the manipulation and chose to step away from it, Batman replied. Took more wisdom than solving any puzzle. As GCPD units arrived to take Martinez into custody, she made one final attempt to assert control. You think you've won, but you don't understand the larger picture. This was just a test run, a proof of concept. There are others who will use what I've learned here. Perhaps, Batman agreed, but now we understand the techniques they'll use, and we have people who can recognize and counter those techniques. Professor Whitman's voice carried quiet resolve. Daniel's research was meant to help people recover from puzzle obsessions, not to enable new forms of manipulation. It's time I made sure his work serves its original purpose. As dawn approached and the rain finally began to subside, Batman stood on the GCPD rooftop, watching the signal projector cycle through its diagnostic routines. The familiar bat symbol appeared briefly, clean and properly focused, before the system shut down for maintenance. Commissioner Gordon joined him, looking considerably more rested than he had for the past several days. Amazing how much quieter the city feels when the communications systems are working properly, he observed. Martinez won't be the last to attempt this kind of attack, Batman noted. We'll need better security protocols for critical infrastructure. Already working on it, Gordon confirmed. Though I have to ask, how did you know Professor Whitman would be able to counter Martinez's psychological strategies? Batman considered the question as the first hints of sunrise began lightening the eastern sky. She understood something that Martinez missed. Puzzles aren't just intellectual exercises, they're expressions of the people who create them. You can't truly understand a puzzle without understanding the mind behind it. And she understood her son's mind well enough to predict how someone would misuse his research. Better than that, Batman replied. You understood it well enough to honor his original intentions. The comm system crackled as Professor Whitman's voice joined the conversation from the cave. I've been reviewing Daniel's complete research archives. There are therapeutic applications here that could genuinely help people whose intelligence has become channeled into destructive patterns. With proper development, this work could prevent future Martinez-type manipulations. You're considering returning to active research? Batman asked. I'm considering fulfilling my son's legacy properly, she corrected. There's a difference between solving puzzles for entertainment and using puzzle theory to help people. Daniel always understood that distinction. As Batman prepared to return to the cave, Alfred's voice came through with characteristic understatement. An eventful few days, Master Bruce. Though I must say, Professor Whitman's contributions were invaluable. Perhaps we should consider consulting with puzzle theorists more regularly. Perhaps we should, Batman agreed, looking out over a city where the digital infrastructure was slowly returning to normal, where hospital systems were once again protecting patient data, where the flow of information that kept Gotham functioning had been restored to its proper channels. In the end, Martinez had been right about one thing. People were puzzles, complex systems of motivations and reactions that could be studied and understood. But what she'd failed to grasp was that understanding people wasn't the same as controlling them. The most important human qualities, compassion, wisdom, the choice to do right even when it's difficult, couldn't be reduced to algorithmic predictions. The rain had stopped completely now, leaving Gotham's streets clean and gleaming in the early morning light. From his position high above the city, Batman could see people beginning their daily routines, unaware of how close they'd come to losing the digital systems that connected their lives. It was, he reflected, exactly how it should be. The best victories were often the quietest ones. Crises averted, disasters prevented, the normal flow of life protected, without fanfare or recognition. In a city that seemed to attract larger-than-life villains and dramatic confrontations, there was something deeply satisfying about a threat neutralized through intelligence, collaboration, and the simple human choice to honor the memory of someone who had believed in using knowledge to help others. The bat signal projector completed its diagnostic cycle and shut down, leaving the dawn sky unmarked by symbols or puzzles. Batman took that as a good sign. Sometimes the most profound victories were marked not by dramatic displays but by the peaceful return of ordinary silence. The restoration of Gotham's digital infrastructure had taken most of the morning, but by afternoon, the city's electronic heartbeat had returned to its normal rhythm. Batman stood in the cave watching Professor Whitman pack her son's research materials with careful reverence. The work of countering Martinez's psychological manipulations was done, but the deeper work of healing would take much longer. "I'll be converting Daniel's research into therapeutic applications," she said, securing the final folder in her briefcase. "Perhaps some good can come from understanding how brilliant minds can be led astray." Alfred approached with tea and the quiet satisfaction of crisis well managed. "The signal projector has been thoroughly debugged and secured. Commissioner Gordon sends his thanks for your assistance, Professor." As the afternoon wore on, Batman found himself reviewing incident reports that had accumulated during the 3 days of communication disruption. Most were routine, minor crimes that had been handled by regular GCPD patrols, domestic disputes resolved by social workers, the ordinary challenges of urban life that continued regardless of larger dramas. But one report caught his attention. During the height of the signal interference, when emergency services were struggling with compromised communications, there had been several disappearances near the old industrial district. People who had simply vanished while walking home from late shifts, leaving no trace except concerned family members filing missing person reports that had been delayed by the system failures. "Oracle," Batman said, pulling up the case files. "Cross-section these disappearances with any unusual activity in the storm drain systems." "Already noticed the pattern," she replied, her voice carrying through the cave speakers. "The missing persons were all last seen within 6 blocks of major sewer access points, and there have been reports of strange sounds from the underground tunnels, Though those got buried under all the communication crisis report. Alfred paused in his tea preparation. Strange sounds, Master Bruce. Described as deep growling and heavy splashing, Oracle continued. Maintenance crews have been avoiding certain sections of the tunnel system. They claim it's due to structural concerns, but the reports suggest something else entirely. Batman studied the missing person files more carefully. 7 people over 3 days, all taken during the evening hours when the rain had been heaviest. The storm drains would have been flowing at maximum capacity, creating perfect cover for someone who knew how to move through Gotham's underground systems. Waylon Jones, Batman said quietly, the name carrying weight in the cave's still air. I was hoping it wouldn't come to that conclusion, Alfred replied with characteristic understatement. Though the evidence does seem to point in that direction, Killer Croc had been quiet for months, retreating into the deepest parts of Gotham's sewer system after their last confrontation. Batman had hoped that the solitude and distance from the city's surface chaos might have a calming effect on Jones's troubled mind. But isolation could be a double-edged gift. Sometimes it provided healing, and sometimes it allowed darker impulses to grow unchecked. The timing suggests opportunism, Oracle noted. The emergency services disrupted by the signal corruption, Jones may have seen a chance to act without immediate response. Professor Whitman looked up from her packing. I'm not familiar with this particular case, but Daniel's research touched on individuals whose psychological conditions were exacerbated by social isolation. Sometimes the absence of normal human contact can allow antisocial behaviors to escalate. Batman nodded grimly. Croc's mutation affects more than just his physical appearance. The psychological impact of his condition, combined with years of rejection and violence, created patterns that are difficult to break, but not impossible to redirect, Alfred added with gentle insistence. We've seen glimpses of the man Waylon Jones could still be, given proper support and understanding. The rain had stopped hours ago, but Batman could hear water still flowing through the cave's natural channels, underground streams that eventually connected to the same tunnel system where 7 people had disappeared. The limestone foundations of Wayne Manor had been carved by centuries of water flow, creating the perfect hiding place for someone who understood how to navigate Gotham's hidden waterways. I'll need to go down into the tunnels, Batman said, already planning his approach. But this isn't the kind of confrontation that benefits from direct assault. If Jones has taken hostages, a more delicate approach would be advisable, Professor Whitman agreed. From what you've described, this individual's psychological state makes him unpredictable, but not necessarily unreachable. Batman began gathering specialized equipment for underground work, waterproof communications gear, enhanced breathing apparatus, tools designed for navigating confined spaces. The sewers beneath Gotham were a maze that few people understood completely, but Batman had spent years mapping their complexities. The recent rains will have changed water levels throughout the system, Alfred noted, studying municipal engineering reports. Some passages that were accessible last week may now be completely flooded, and others that were flooded may now be accessible, Batman replied. Jones knows the tunnel system better than anyone. He'll be using passages that regular maintenance crews don't even know exist. As evening approached, Batman prepared for a very different kind of challenge than the intellectual puzzles of the past few days. The sewers demanded physical endurance, environmental awareness, and the kind of patient tracking that couldn't be rushed. Most importantly, they required an understanding that the creature he would face down there was both dangerous predator and suffering human being. Master Bruce, Alfred said as Batman prepared to depart. Perhaps it would be wise to remember that monsters are often made, not born. Waylon Jones was a man before he became what the city fears. I'll remember, Batman replied, activating the tunnel entrance that would take him into Gotham's underground maze. But I won't forget that 7 people are missing, and they're counting on me to bring them home. The transition from the cave's controlled environment to the raw, wet darkness of the sewers was always jarring. Here, technology meant less than instinct, and the careful plans that worked on Gotham's streets often had to be abandoned in favor of immediate adaptation to constantly changing conditions. As Batman descended into the tunnels where flowing water echoed off ancient stonework, he left behind the world of signals and puzzles for a more primal challenge. Somewhere in the darkness ahead, in passages carved by time and necessity, a tortured soul waited with answers about 7 missing people. The only question was whether that soul could still remember what it meant to be human. The sound of his footsteps disappeared into the larger symphony of underground water, and Batman followed the flow toward whatever waited in the depths below. Rain drummed against the windows of Wayne Manor with the steady persistence of a heartbeat, each drop carrying whispers of the storm gathering over Gotham. In the cave below, Batman stood before the sonar mapping display, watching as pulse after pulse revealed the city's hidden anatomy, the network of tunnels, sewers, and forgotten passages that formed Gotham's underground circulatory system. The 3rd sinkhole opened on Mercy Street this afternoon, Alfred reported quietly, his voice carrying the weight of growing concern. That makes 7 in the past week, Master Bruce. The pattern is becoming clearer. Batman's cowled figure remained motionless as he studied the data streams flowing across multiple monitors. Each sinkhole appeared random on the surface, but the sonar mapping revealed a different truth. They formed a rough spiral, circling inward toward something deep beneath the city's oldest district. The geological surveys show no natural explanation, he said, his voice barely audible above the cave's ambient sounds. But these readings... He gestured to a display showing seismic activity. Something large is moving down there. Something that knows the tunnel systems better than any city engineer. Alfred approached, carrying a leather portfolio that bore the patina of age. I've been researching the city's historical records, sir. What I found might explain these disturbances. He opened the portfolio carefully, revealing architectural drawings yellowed with time. These are the original plans for Gotham's foundation, dating back to the city's earliest days. Most people assume our sewer system was built in the industrial era, but these show something far older. Batman turned from the monitors, his attention drawn to the ancient drawings. The plans revealed a vast network of chambers and waterways carved into the bedrock itself. Not mere sewers, but what appeared to be a subterranean cathedral of stone and flowing water. An aquifer, Alfred explained, tracing the intricate patterns with one finger. Natural springs and underground rivers that the city's founders incorporated into their plans. But look here. He pointed to a series of chambers at the network's heart. These weren't natural formations. Someone, or something, expanded them deliberately. The sonar display pulsed again, its latest sweep revealing movement in the deepest tunnels. Whatever was down there had paused, as if sensing the electronic intrusion from above. Waylon Jones, Batman said quietly, using Killer Croc's real name with deliberate humanity. He's been moving deeper into the system for weeks. CPD assumed he was just finding new hiding spots, but he studied the correlation between the creature's movement and the surface collapses. He's not hiding, he's protecting something, or protecting us from something. Alfred suggested with characteristic insight. The sinkholes, they're not random destruction, they're warnings. Each one has appeared in areas where heavy construction was planned, as if someone is trying to prevent digging. Batman pulled up the city planning database, overlaying it with the historical maps Alfred had discovered. The pattern became clear immediately. Every proposed construction project that would have penetrated deeply into the old aquifer system had been stopped by a sinkhole opening precisely where the heaviest excavation was scheduled. He's trying to preserve the old water system, Batman realized. But why? What's down there that's worth protecting? Before Alfred could respond, the cave's communication array crackled to life. Oracle's voice emerged from the speakers, carrying an edge of urgency despite her professional calm. Batman, I'm tracking multiple emergency calls from the Waterworks district. Elena Rodriguez, the chief engineer at Gotham Water Authority, has been trying to reach you. She says the pressure readings in the old system have been showing impossible fluctuations. Put her through, Batman replied, already moving toward the Batmobile's launch platform. Elena Rodriguez's voice filled the cave, tinged with the kind of exhaustion that came from sleepless nights spent wrestling with inexplicable data. Batman? Thank God. I've been monitoring our deep sensors for the past month, and what I'm seeing, it shouldn't be possible. Water pressure that builds and releases in patterns that suggest deliberate control. Someone, or something, is managing the flow in the old aquifer system. Have you observed any correlation with the surface sinkholes? Batman asked as he ran final systems checks on the Batmobile. That's just it, Rodriguez replied, her voice gaining intensity. The sinkholes aren't random collapses. They're controlled releases of pressure. Someone with intimate knowledge of our underground infrastructure is using the old system's pressure valves to create precisely targeted structural failures. It's actually brilliant engineering. Alfred leaned closer to the communication array. Ms. Rodriguez, are the old city plans you're working from complete? Do they show the full extent of the original aquifer chambers? A pause filled with the sound of papers rustling. That's the problem, she said finally. Our records only show the parts that were incorporated into the modern system. But based on the pressure readings, there are vast chambers down there that don't appear on any contemporary maps, spaces that were sealed off decades ago, maybe longer. Batman's jaw tightened as implications crystallized. Someone familiar with both the old and new systems would be needed to coordinate this kind of controlled flooding. Which brings us back to Waylon Jones, Alfred observed quietly. Rodriguez's voice carried a note of reluctant admiration. Whoever's doing this understands hydraulic engineering better than most of our certified professionals. They're not just hiding in the tunnels, they're conducting them like a symphony. The cave fell silent except for the gentle hum of electronics and the distant sound of rain. The Batman studied the combined data one final time. Geological surveys, historical maps, pressure readings, and seismic activity, all pointing toward the same conclusion. Oracle, I need you to monitor the waterworks system in real time, he said finally. Alert me to any changes in the deep pressure readings. Alfred, compile everything we know about the original aquifer system. If Croc is trying to protect something ancient, I need to understand what it is before I go down there. Master Bruce, Alfred said as Batman prepared to depart. Perhaps this is one of those rare occasions where listening might prove more valuable than pursuing. Mr. Jones has shown remarkable restraint. He could have caused much more damage if destruction were his goal. Batman paused at the words, recognizing the wisdom in Alfred's counsel. In the years since his transformation, Killer Croc had often been driven by pain and isolation into acts of violence, but this pattern suggested something different. Intelligence, purpose, even a kind of protective instinct. "I'll approach carefully," Batman agreed. "But people are in danger as long as those sinkholes keep opening. And if something in those deep chambers is causing this behavior..." He left the thought unfinished, climbing into the Batmobile as the platform began its rotation toward the hidden exit. Rain continued its steady percussion against the cave's concealed entrance, washing the city above while mystery stirred in the depths below. The drive through Gotham's rain-soaked streets revealed a city on edge. Emergency crews had cordoned off the latest sinkhole, their floodlights creating harsh pools of illumination in the darkness. Batman could see the geometric precision of the collapse, not the random subsidence of natural settling, but the calculated failure of specific support structures. He parked several blocks away, in an alley that provided access to one of the older maintenance entrances to the sewer system. The rain had intensified, turning gutters into temporary rivers that fed the underground network with fresh runoff. As he descended through the access tunnel, the city's sounds gradually gave way to the whispered conversations of flowing water. The tunnels immediately below street level showed signs of recent passage. Not just the usual detritus of urban drainage, but deliberate modification. Someone had reinforced certain passages while allowing others to flood, creating a system of controlled channels that directed water flow with careful precision. Batman activated his cowl's enhanced vision, switching between multiple spectrums to track the modifications. The work was extensive and intelligent, showing understanding of both structural engineering and hydrodynamics. Whoever had done this possessed skills that went far beyond mere survival instinct. "Oracle," he sub-vocalized into his communicator, "I'm seeing extensive modifications to the upper tunnel system. Professional-grade engineering work. Are you still tracking pressure changes in the deep system?" "Affirmative," she replied, her voice carrying clearly through the waterproof speakers in his cowl. "Elena Rodriguez is monitoring from the waterworks station. She says the deep chambers are showing increased activity, almost like they're responding to your presence down there." Batman continued deeper, following passages that grew older with each downward turn. The modern concrete and steel of the recent infrastructure gave way to older brick, then finally to worked stone that spoke of the city's earliest days. The air itself changed, carrying scents of minerals and deep earth that had been undisturbed for decades. At a junction where 3 passages converged, he encountered the first sign of human habitation in the deep tunnels. A small chamber had been carved out of the stone wall, furnished with salvaged materials arranged with surprising care. A battery-powered lantern provided gentle illumination, revealing books wrapped in plastic to protect them from moisture, and tools that were both well-maintained and clearly used for the tunnel modifications he had observed. "Someone's been living down here," he reported quietly, "not just sheltering, but making a home." Before Oracle could respond, a voice emerged from the shadows beyond the lantern's reach, aged and careful, carrying the distinctive accent of someone who had spent years in Gotham's underground communities. "You're looking for the big fellow," the voice said, without hostility. "Been expecting someone like you to come down eventually. Name's Thomas. I've been watching the tunnels for 15 years, and I ain't never seen anything like what's been happening lately." Batman turned toward the voice, his enhanced vision revealing an elderly man whose clothes were weathered but clean, whose bearing suggested intelligence despite his circumstances. "Thomas, you've seen Killer Croc recently." "Wayland," Thomas corrected gently. "He prefers his given name down here. And yes, I've seen him. More than seen him. Been watching him work. Man's got skills you wouldn't expect, considering what the papers say about him. The old man stepped into the lantern's circle of light, revealing a face marked by years but sharp with observation. He's been reinforcing the old chambers, see, not destroying, protecting. Something's got him spooked, and it takes a lot to spook someone like Waylon. What's he protecting? Batman asked, keeping his voice level and non-threatening. Thomas gestured deeper into the tunnels, where the sound of flowing water grew louder. Follow me, but step careful. The old Aquifer chambers are active again for the first time in decades. Water's rising in places that've been dry since before I was born. They moved through passages that grew increasingly ancient, the worked stone giving way to natural caverns expanded and shaped by centuries of flowing water. The sound of their footsteps was swallowed by the acoustic properties of the deep chambers, creating an atmosphere of profound isolation from the world above. The city records don't show half of what's down here, Thomas explained as they walked. When they built the modern system, they just sealed off the parts they couldn't use. But Waylon, he's been opening them again. Says something's stirring that shouldn't be left alone. Stirring? Batman prompted. Thomas paused at a junction, where the tunnel ahead disappeared into darkness, filled with the sound of flowing water. I've been down here long enough to know the difference between natural settling and something else. The old chambers have been breathing, you might say, pressure building and releasing in patterns, like something large moving around in spaces we can't see. Batman activated his sonar mapping function, sending out pulses that revealed the true scope of the chamber system ahead. The readings were extraordinary. Vast spaces carved out of the bedrock, connected by channels that formed a complex network of flowing water, and, in the deepest chamber, something large and motionless that didn't match any geological formation. The readings show something significant in the main chamber, he told Thomas, something that shouldn't be there naturally. The old man nodded grimly. That's what's got Waylon so worked up. Says it's been there longer than the city, sleeping in the deep water. But all the construction above, all the digging and blasting for new foundations, it's waking up. Oracle's voice crackled through Batman's communicator. Batman, Elena Rodriguez is reporting massive pressure spikes in the deep system. Whatever's down there, it's becoming more active. As if summoned by her words, a low vibration began to resonate through the stone around them. Not the random settling of geological forces, but something rhythmic and deliberate. The lantern's flame flickered as air pressure shifted and the sound of flowing water changed tone. We need to move, Thomas said urgently. When the deep chamber starts resonating like that, the water levels can change fast. Waylon built escape routes, but you have to know where they are. Batman followed the old man through passages that seemed to twist and branch according to some ancient logic. The vibrations grew stronger, accompanied by sounds that seemed to come from the stone itself. Not the groaning of stressed architecture, but something more organic, like the slow breathing of some vast creature. They emerged onto a stone platform that overlooked the main Aquifer chamber, and Batman's enhanced vision revealed why the sonar readings had been so puzzling. The chamber was vast, its ceiling lost in shadows high above, its floor occupied by dark water that reflected no light. And in the center of that dark pool, something pale and massive rested just beneath the surface. Not a geological formation, but something that had once been alive. Fossil, Thomas said quietly, seeing Batman's reaction. But not like anything in the museums. Waylon thinks it's some kind of prehistoric creature that got trapped down here when the rock was still forming. But lately, the water around the massive form rippled without any apparent cause, and the vibrations in the stone intensified. Whatever was down there, fossil or otherwise, was reacting to something. Perhaps the increasing pressure from the construction above, perhaps something else entirely. "Where is he?" Batman asked, scanning the chamber for signs of Killer Croc's presence. Thomas pointed toward the far side of the chamber, where the stone platform continued around the pool's perimeter. He built himself a workshop over there. Been working day and night on some kind of pressure system, trying to keep the water levels stable. They made their way around the chamber's edge, passing carved channels that directed water flow with mathematical precision. The work showed not just engineering skill, but artistic sensibility, someone who understood that function and beauty were not mutually exclusive. Killer Croc's workshop occupied a natural alcove that had been expanded and reinforced with salvaged materials. The space was surprisingly organized, filled with tools, charts, and mechanical components arranged with careful logic. And in the center, working by the light of several battery-powered lamps, was Waylon Jones himself. He looked up as they approached, his transformed features showing neither surprise nor hostility. "Wondered when you'd find your way down here, Batman. Figured it was just a matter of time." "Waylon," Batman replied, using the man's given name deliberately. "I need to understand what's happening. The sinkholes, the pressure changes. People above are in danger." Killer Croc straightened from his work, revealing the mechanical device he'd been assembling. It appeared to be some kind of pressure regulation system designed to monitor and control water flow through the chamber network. "People above been putting people below in danger for years," he said, his voice carrying old pain alongside current frustration. "Every new foundation they dig, every tunnel they blast, they get closer to waking something that should stay sleeping." He gestured toward the dark pool where the massive form rested beneath the water. "Don't know what it is exactly. Something old, something that was here before the city, before people. But it's connected to the whole water system, and when they shake the ground above..." As if responding to his words, another vibration pulsed through the chamber. The water around the submerged form rippled more actively, and pressure gauges throughout Croc's workshop showed spikes that made him move quickly to adjust his jury-rigged control systems. "It's not dead," Batman realized, watching the creature's subtle movements. "It's dormant, but the construction vibrations are stimulating it." "Smart man," Croc acknowledged. "And when it wakes up fully, when it starts moving around down here, all that water's got to go somewhere. Pressure's been building for weeks. Those sinkholes I've been opening, they're relief valves. Let a little pressure out here and there, instead of waiting for the whole system to blow." Thomas nodded from his position near the workshop's entrance. "Waylon's been trying to protect everyone, the folks below and the folks above, but he can't keep the pressure balanced much longer. System's too big, change is happening too fast." Batman studied the pressure readings on Croc's improvised control panel. The data showed a system on the verge of catastrophic failure, not from malicious intent, but from the accumulated stress of decades of urban development above an ecosystem that had remained stable for centuries. "What do you need?" he asked quietly. Killer Croc's expression showed surprise at the question. "What I need is for them to stop digging, stop blasting, give the old creature time to settle back down into proper sleep." He gestured at his workshop with frustration evident in his voice. "But I'm just one person down here, and there's construction crews all over the city above." "Oracle," Batman subvocalized. "I need you to contact Elena Rodriguez. Have her pull up all current construction permits for projects involving deep excavation, and get me building department contacts for emergency construction moratoria." "Already on it," Oracle replied. "Elena says she can implement emergency water pressure protocols that would shut down any construction requiring deep excavation. But she'll need official authorization." Batman considered the situation rapidly. Above ground, He had resources and connections that could halt the construction threatening the aquifer system. Below ground, Waylon Jones had the knowledge and skills needed to manage the immediate crisis. "Thomas," he said, turning to the old man, "how many people live in these tunnels? People who would be at risk if the pressure system fails?" "Maybe 30-40 folks in the deep sections," Thomas replied. "Most would have warning, could get to higher ground. But some of the older ones, the ones who can't move fast, I'll make sure they're evacuated safely," Batman promised. "Then to kill a Croc, and I'll stop the construction that's threatening the system. But I need your help to manage the transition. Can your pressure controls keep things stable for 24 hours? Croc studied his instruments, calculating possibilities. "Maybe, if nothing else goes wrong, if the creature doesn't get more agitated." He looked directly at Batman. "But why would you help? Most people think I'm just a monster down here." "Because you're not," Batman replied simply. "You're an engineer protecting his community and trying to prevent a disaster. That makes you exactly the kind of person I work with." The chamber's vibrations intensified again, accompanied by a sound like whale song transmitted through stone and water. The massive form in the pool shifted slightly, sending ripples across the dark surface that lapped at the stone platform's edge. "It's beautiful," Thomas said quietly, watching the creature's subtle movements. "Terrible and beautiful, like the city itself." Batman activated his communicator. "Oracle, initiate emergency protocols. Contact Commissioner Gordon and have him coordinate with Elena Rodriguez on halting all deep excavation projects citywide. Tell him it's a structural emergency that could affect the entire downtown area." "Understood," Oracle replied. "Elena's already implementing water pressure emergency protocols. She says that should reduce stress on the deep system within hours." Killer Croc adjusted his controls as new pressure readings came in. "Systems responding," he reported, some tension leaving his voice for the first time since Batman had arrived. "If you can really stop the digging above." "I can," Batman assured him. "But this is temporary. Eventually the city will need to resume construction. We need a permanent solution." Croc nodded toward his workshop full of salvaged equipment and improvised engineering. "Been working on that too. The old system's actually more sophisticated than anything the city engineers designed. If we could integrate the modern controls with the original architecture." "A hybrid system," Batman understood. "Using the creature's natural regulation abilities as part of the city's water management." "Exactly. Let it sleep, but work with its natural rhythms instead of fighting them." Croc's expression showed the passion of an engineer discussing elegant solutions. The old builders, whoever they were, they understood something we forgot. How to work with nature instead of just conquering it. Thomas moved to the platform's edge, watching the dark water with the appreciation of someone who had learned to find beauty in unexpected places. "Wayland's right. Down here you learn that the city's got its own life, its own needs. Maybe it's time the folks above learned that too." Batman spent the next several hours working with Killer Croc to stabilize the pressure system, while Oracle coordinated the construction moratorium above. The creature in the deep pool gradually settled as vibrations from the surface decreased, its movements becoming less agitated and more rhythmic. As the immediate crisis passed, Batman found himself studying the hybrid engineering that Croc had developed, a combination of salvaged modern equipment and restored historical infrastructure that created something more effective than either system alone. "You could teach this," he said finally. "Work with the city engineers to implement these solutions officially." Croc's laugh was bitter, but not entirely without hope. "Think they'd listen to someone who looks like me, Someone with my record. I think they'd listen to someone who saved their city, Batman replied. And I think Elena Rodriguez would be very interested in your pressure regulation innovations. The old creature in the pool had settled into what appeared to be deeper sleep, its movements now so subtle they were barely perceptible. The water around it had cleared slightly, revealing more of its ancient form. Not the monster that surface dwellers might imagine, but something that had once been magnificent in its own era. It's not the only one, is it? Batman asked, studying the creature's proportions. Thomas shook his head. Waylon's found signs of others deeper down. A whole ecosystem that's been sleeping under the city for who knows how long, all connected through the water system. Which means all vulnerable to surface disruption, Batman concluded. This isn't just about one creature or one chamber. It's about recognizing that Gotham exists on multiple levels, and they all need protection. Oracle's voice came through the communicator with a note of satisfaction. Batman, construction moratorium is in effect citywide. Elena Rodriguez has coordinated with city planning to review all projects for potential impact on the deep water system, and she wants to meet with your engineering consultant as soon as possible. Killer Croc looked up from his control panel, something like hope flickering in his eyes. You think she'd really work with me? Knowing what I am, I think she's an engineer who recognizes elegant solutions when she sees them, Batman replied. And I think Thomas is right. Maybe it's time for the people above to understand that the city has its own life. As they prepared to leave the deep chamber, Batman took one final look at the ancient creature resting in the dark water. It had been here when Gotham was just an idea, would probably be here long after the current city had crumbled into history. There was something humbling about that perspective, something that put even his mission into a larger context. Waylon, he said as they gathered their equipment, when you meet with Elena Rodriguez, remember that you're not just an engineer or a consultant. You're the guardian of something that most people don't even know exists. That's a responsibility I understand. Killer Croc nodded, understanding passing between them. Been guarding it alone for a long time. Might be nice to have help. You've had help, Thomas pointed out, gesturing around the chamber. Every person who lives down here, everyone who's learned to respect what the deep places need. Community's not always about what you can see. They made their way back through the tunnels, following routes that Thomas and Croc had developed over years of careful observation. The water levels had stabilized, the pressure readings were normal, and the ancient creature slept peacefully in its dark pool. As they climbed toward the surface, Batman reflected on what the night had taught him. Gotham's foundations were more complex than its architects had ever imagined, and protecting the city meant understanding all its layers. Not just the visible streets and buildings, but the hidden systems that supported everything above. Master Bruce, Alfred's voice came through the communicator as they neared the upper tunnels. I've been monitoring the situation from the cave. How are our friends in the deep chambers? Safe, Batman replied, and working on solutions that might change how the city thinks about its own foundations. Excellent. I've prepared hot coffee and dry clothes for your return. And perhaps Mr. Jones would appreciate a proper meal after his weeks of intensive engineering work. Batman looked at Killer Croc, who had spent the night demonstrating that heroism came in many forms. Not always dramatic or publicly recognized, but no less vital for being hidden in the shadows. I think he'd appreciate the company more than the meal, Batman said. It's been a long time since anyone acknowledged him as the protector he's always been. They emerged into the pre-dawn darkness of Gotham's streets, where the rain had stopped and the first hints of sunrise were beginning to touch the eastern sky. The city above was waking to a day that would be safer because of work done in the darkness below. Work that would probably never make the news, never earn recognition, but that had preserved both the urban landscape and the ancient ecosystem that supported it. As they separated to return to their respective worlds, Batman carried with him a renewed understanding of what it meant to be Gotham's guardian. Protection wasn't just about stopping criminals or preventing disasters. It was about recognizing the connections between all the city's layers, honoring the responsibility to preserve what was valuable, whether it was visible or hidden, ancient or modern. The deep waters beneath Gotham flowed quietly in their channels, carrying the dreams of sleeping giants and the hopes of human communities that had learned to find home in the most unexpected places. And in the spaces between surface and depth, between known and unknown, the night's work continued, unseen but essential, connecting all the city's stories into one vast, living narrative of protection and care. In the days that followed, Elena Rodriguez would work with Waylon Jones to develop new protocols for construction near sensitive water systems. Thomas would help coordinate with other underground communities to establish better communication with surface authorities. The ancient creature would sleep peacefully in its dark pool, protected by systems that honored both its needs and the city's growth. But that night, as Batman made his way back through the tunnels toward the surface, the story of the deep chambers was far from over. The ancient creature's stirring had awakened something else in the aquifer system. Not another sleeping giant, but a network of smaller chambers that had remained sealed for decades. Thomas led them through passages that even he had never fully explored, following the sound of moving water to discover spaces that predated Gotham's founding by centuries. These chambers showed signs of deliberate construction, not the natural caverns of the main aquifer, but rooms carved with tools and purpose by unknown hands. The original inhabitants, Thomas said quietly, running his weathered fingers along worked stone walls, before the colonists came, before the city was even imagined. Indigenous peoples who understood these waters in ways we're only beginning to appreciate. Batman's enhanced vision revealed symbols carved into the stone, not random markings, but what appeared to be a sophisticated mapping system, showing the relationship between surface watersheds and underground flow patterns. The knowledge preserved in these walls was extraordinary, representing generations of careful observation and hydraulic engineering. He knew about the sleeping creature, he realized, studying pictographs that clearly depicted the massive form in the main chamber. Not just knew about it, they built their entire water management system around its presence. Killer Croc examined the carvings with professional interest. Look at these flow diagrams. They're more accurate than anything in the city's modern plans. These people understood that the creature's breathing patterns affected water pressure throughout the entire system. As they moved deeper into the complex, they discovered chambers that served different functions, some clearly designed for water storage, others arranged for what appeared to be ceremonial purposes, but all were connected by channels that worked in harmony with the creature's natural rhythms. A living system, Thomas observed with growing wonder. They didn't just manage the water, they partnered with it, made themselves part of the ecosystem instead of trying to control it. In the heart of the ancient complex, they found the chamber that explained everything. The walls were covered with detailed carvings showing the full scope of the underground ecosystem. Not just one sleeping creature, but an entire community of them, connected through the water system that extended far beyond Gotham's current boundaries. There are others, Batman said, studying the comprehensive maps. The creature in the main chamber is just one part of a much larger network. These carvings show connections extending for miles in every direction. Killer Croc's expression showed a mixture of awe and concern. It explains the pressure fluctuations I've been tracking. The system's not just local, it's regional. When one creature stirs, it affects the others through the water connections. Oracle's voice crackled through Batman's communicator with new urgency. Batman, Elena Rodriguez is reporting unusual activity in water systems throughout the tri-state area. Pressure readings from as far away as Metropolis are showing the same kinds of fluctuations you've been tracking in Gotham. The implications were staggering. The ancient ecosystem didn't recognize modern city boundaries or political divisions. It was a living network that connected vast distances through underground waterways, with each sleeping creature serving as both a node and a guardian of the system's stability. The construction moratorium in Gotham was just the beginning, Batman realized. If this system extends as far as these maps suggest, we need to coordinate with multiple cities, maybe multiple states. Thomas studied the pictographs with the careful attention of someone who had learned to read the underground world's subtle signs. The old people, they had protocols for this. Ceremonies, rituals, but really just ways of monitoring the system's health. Making sure human activity didn't disrupt the balance, Batman activated his communicator. Oracle, I need you to contact the Justice League's Environmental Monitoring Network. We're looking at a situation that extends far beyond Gotham's jurisdiction. As they explored further, they discovered that the ancient engineers had built their complex with the same kind of hybrid approach that Killer Croc had independently developed, combining natural systems with carefully planned modifications that enhanced rather than replaced the ecosystem's existing functions. Centuries of accumulated knowledge, Croc said with professional admiration. And we almost lost it all because we thought we could build something better without understanding what was already here. The water in the ancient chambers was remarkably clear, fed by springs that had remained unpolluted despite decades of urban development above. Fish swam in the deeper pools. Not the mutated creatures one might expect in an urban underground, but species that had adapted to the unique conditions of the aquifer system over centuries. A whole world down here, Thomas marveled, watching the fish move through the clear water. Not just surviving, but thriving. Makes you wonder what else we've missed by focusing only on the surface. As they documented the ancient complex, Batman found himself thinking about the implications for his own mission. Protecting Gotham meant more than stopping crime or preventing disasters. It meant understanding the city as part of larger systems, recognizing connections that extended far beyond what was visible from the surface. The creature in the main chamber, he said to Killer Croc. It's not just sleeping, it's monitoring, isn't it? Responding to changes throughout the entire network. Croc nodded, his understanding of the system's complexity growing with each new discovery. That's why it got agitated when the construction increased. Not because of local disruption, but because it sensed threats to the network's stability from multiple locations. They spent hours mapping the connections between chambers, following water channels that led to passages sealed by careful stonework. Some of the seals were ancient, placed by the original builders. Others were more recent, showing evidence of maintenance and repair over the centuries. Someone's been maintaining this system, Batman observed, studying the newer stonework. Not just the original builders, but generations of caretakers who understood its importance. Thomas's expression grew thoughtful. There have always been people who knew about the deep places. Folks who stayed underground, learned the old ways. Most of the surface world forgot, but some of us remembered. As they prepared to leave the ancient complex, Killer Croc made final adjustments to pressure monitors he had installed throughout the chamber system. The devices would allow him to track the health of the entire network, responding to changes before they became crises. This changes everything, he said. reviewing the data streams from multiple monitoring points. Managing the Gotham system was complex enough, but this is like trying to conduct an orchestra spread across multiple cities. Batman considered the resources that would be needed to properly protect such an extensive ecosystem. You won't be working alone. Elena Rodriguez has contacts in water management agencies throughout the region, and the Justice League has experience with coordination across multiple jurisdictions. The ancient creature's breathing patterns had stabilized completely, its movements now synchronized with the subtle flows throughout the extended network. The harmony was beautiful to observe, a living demonstration of how individual elements could work together to create something larger than their separate parts. As they climbed back toward the surface, following routes that Thomas had mapped over years of careful exploration, Batman reflected on what the night had revealed. Gotham's underground was connected to systems that extended far beyond the city's boundaries, part of an ancient network that had been functioning for centuries before the first human settlements appeared. Master Bruce, Alfred's voice came through the communicator as they neared the upper tunnels. I've been monitoring communications from water management agencies throughout the region. It seems your discoveries have implications that extend quite far indeed. How far? Batman asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Initial reports suggest network activity as far south as Washington, D.C., and as far north as Montreal. We're looking at a continental ecosystem, sir, with Gotham as just one node in a much larger system. The scope was overwhelming, but also inspiring. The ancient builders had created something that transcended individual communities, connecting vast distances through careful engineering and deep understanding of natural systems. It was a reminder that the most impressive achievements often came from working with existing patterns, rather than trying to impose new ones. Killer Croc paused at a junction where modern sewers intersected with the ancient passages. I've been thinking about what you said earlier, about teaching this to the city engineers. But maybe it's bigger than that. Maybe it's time for all the cities connected to this network to learn how to work together. Consortium, Batman agreed. Environmental protection that crosses political boundaries, because the ecosystem doesn't recognize them. Thomas smiled, his weathered face showing the satisfaction of someone who had long hoped for exactly this kind of recognition. The old people would have liked that idea. They never saw the water as belonging to any one group. It was a shared responsibility, a common heritage. As they emerged into the pre-dawn streets of Gotham, the city around them looked different. Not just a collection of buildings and streets, but one node in a vast network of connected systems. The lights in the windows represented not just individual lives, but part of a larger community that extended through the underground waterways to distant cities and ancient ecosystems. Oracle's voice provided a final update as they prepared to part ways. Batman, I've established contact with water management officials in 12 cities. They're all reporting similar patterns of unusual activity, and they're all interested in coordinating their response. Elena Rodriguez is organizing a conference call for tomorrow morning. And the Justice League? Batman asked. Already briefed. They're treating this as a continental environmental issue that requires international cooperation. Superman is reaching out to his contacts in the scientific community, and Wonder Woman has expressed particular interest in the historical and cultural aspects of the ancient systems. Killer Croc's expression showed a mixture of hope and trepidation. Never thought I'd be working with the Justice League. Spent so many years thinking I was just a monster. You're an engineer who saved multiple cities, Batman corrected, and a guardian who protected something that most people don't even know exists. That makes you exactly the kind of person the League works with. The sun was beginning to rise as they reached the point where their paths would diverge. Thomas would return to his community in the tunnels, carrying news of the discoveries and the promise of better coordination with surface authorities. Killer Croc would meet with Elena Rodriguez to begin the complex work of integrating ancient wisdom with modern water management systems, and Batman would return to Wayne Manor with a renewed understanding of what it meant to protect Gotham. The city was not an isolated entity, but part of connections that extended through time and space, linked to other communities through systems that had been functioning since before recorded history. "This is just the beginning," he said as they prepared to separate. "Understanding the network is one thing. Learning to work with it, to protect it, while allowing the cities above to continue growing. That's going to take time and collaboration on a scale we've never attempted. But we have help," Thomas pointed out, gesturing toward the underground passages where other communities waited to share their accumulated knowledge. "And we have the example of people who made it work for centuries before us." Killer Croc nodded toward the monitoring equipment that would track the ancient system's health. "And we have technology that the old builders never dreamed of, not to replace their work, but to enhance it, to help us understand and protect what they created." As Batman made his way back to the Batcave, he carried with him the memory of the ancient chambers and their carved walls, the sleeping creatures and their interconnected dreams, the clear water that connected distant cities through pathways older than human memory. The night had revealed not just a crisis averted, but a new understanding of the complexity and beauty of the systems that supported all life above ground. The Batcave welcomed him with its familiar sounds and shadow, but now he saw it differently, not just as a base of operations, but as another node in the vast network of caves and passages that connected Gotham to the wider world. Alfred waited with coffee and dry clothes, as promised, but also with reports that would begin the complex work of coordination and protection on a continental scale. "Master Bruce," Alfred said as Batman began his debriefing, "I believe you've discovered something that will change how we think about urban planning and environmental protection for generations to come." "We've rediscovered something," Batman corrected. "The knowledge was always there, preserved by people who understood its importance even when the surface world forgot. And in the deep chambers beneath Gotham, the ancient creature slept peacefully in its dark pool, its breathing synchronized with the rhythms of a network that connected sleeping giants across vast distances. The water flowed in channels carved by forgotten hands, carrying messages between communities that had learned to work together across the boundaries of time and space. The city above was safer because of guardians it would never see, protected by systems it barely understood, connected to places it had never considered. And in the spaces between surface and depth, between known and unknown, the work continued, patient, persistent, and essential to the survival of everything that lived and breathed in the complex ecosystem that was the modern world. Batman would carry the memory of this night as a reminder that heroism often looked different than expected, that sometimes the greatest courage lay not in dramatic confrontation, but in the quiet persistence of those who chose to guard what others never even knew was at risk. Gotham's foundations were stronger for having guardians at every level, protectors who understood that true security came not from controlling every variable, but from respecting the complex relationships that made life possible in the spaces between order and mystery, surface and depth, the city that was seen and the city that dreamed in darkness below. And so our tale of Gotham comes to an end. Let the gentle night embrace you as you drift toward peaceful dreams, knowing that somewhere in the darkness, the Dark Knight watches over his city. If you're not asleep yet, We will now play the ambience of Gotham City at night to help you fall asleep. And if you were just listening to our tales, we will see you next time. Good night and sleep well.